I'm live. Didn't even realize it. Good morning, friends. Good morning. It really is a beautiful morning this morning. If you are on, I would ask that you just say good morning or hey or hi or something in the chat so that, or in the comments, and so that I can say good morning to you and acknowledge that you're here. I know we got one person on this morning. And who is that today? Hey, Diane, good morning. I hope you're doing well, girlfriend. I've been thinking about you. I hope you're doing okay. I'll have to get filled in a little later on this week about how you're doing. I would really like to hear how you're doing. And uh, oh, thank you so much. Aren't you sweet? Okay, I have to tell everybody what she said. She said my hair and my skin look beautiful. You're really, really sweet. Thank you so much. My hair, I don't know why I haven't cut my hair earlier or sooner or before. It's been quite a long time since I've had my hair cut. When I married Mike, my hair was shorter than this actually, but in a similar cut. But I absolutely love this length. I love this cut. I love the woman that did my hair, and I love it's versatile. Even though it seems like this is pretty much it. I can curl it. I can wear it like this. I can still wear it with a headband, and no matter what I do, it looks really cute. I can put it behind my ears. I can wear it more in my face. It's fun. I just never really thought about a short haircut being quite so versatile as this. It's pretty cool. So you're the only one on right now, but hey, that is great. I'm really grateful. And I'm sure there'll be some people who will come on. I know there's someone else that just popped on too. But I know there'll be people who will be watching later in the replay. So hey, Joy, good morning. How are you? Nice to see you this morning. I really appreciate you hopping on and joining this morning. So this week, I've actually gotten to go away. I was visiting some relatives for a few days and just had some time to think and reflect. And I know there's someone else on this morning. Um, and I've had I've had worship on my mind this morning and this week. I've had worship on my mind. So whenever I think about God's desire for us to worship, I always go back to Exodus. Um, I love the story of Moses and the story of Moses leading the people out of Egypt, the things that God said to Moses, and just how all of that transpired. So I wanted to just talk about that for a minute. The story here briefly in Exodus. So in the beginning of Exodus is kind of introducing for us Moses and his background and all. But then in chapter 3, when Moses is at the burning bush, God says to Moses that he's going to lead the people out of Egypt, right? And he's going to set the people free. And he's going to lead them to a land of milk and honey. So here we see that God's blessing, God's desire for his people. Hey, I see there's several people on this morning. So if you are on, please put your name in the comments and just say, hey, good morning, so that I can acknowledge that you're here. I would love that. And I do appreciate y'all joining this morning. So we're talking about worship this morning. Chapter 3 of Exodus, verse 8, God explains to Moses why he wants to let the people free, why he wants to set the people free in Egypt to bring them to the land of milk and honey. Hey, Pebbles, good morning. Nice to see you this morning. Thanks for joining. And then if you go on to verse 12 in chapter 3, he said, I will be with you when you bring the people out of Egypt, and you will serve God. Um, I can't read the rest of my writing, but anyway, that you will serve God, and that's a really key, a key explanation there. So God is letting Moses know that he wants the people to be set free. One, to live in the land of milk and honey. Two, to bring the people out so that they can serve God. Then if you go to chapter 5, I'm really skipping through here because there's just so much meat in here, but I just want to highlight a couple of things. So in chapter 5, verse 1, it says, let the people go that they may have a festival in the wilderness. That's interesting. Okay. So a few reasons why the people have been set free: to live in the land of milk and honey, where, obviously when I think of land of milk and honey, I think of thriving, where there's, there's no, you're not, you're not wondering where your next meal is going to come. You're thriving. The other reason is to serve God. And here it's saying to hold a festival in the wilderness. And then chapter 5, verse 3 says, in the wilderness, they will sacrifice to God. So sacrifice in this, these times, people know that this is their form of worship. This is a specific way in which they worship God. Verse 8, it says, let us go. When he's talking to Pharaoh, he says, let us go to offer sacrifice to our God. So again, we're talking about worship. In chapter 8, verse 1, Moses is instructed to go to Pharaoh and say, thus says the Lord, let my people go so that they may serve me. And if you look at some other translations, it specifically says, so that they may worship me. In chapter 8, verse 8, Pharaoh says, they've got the frogs, and the frogs are absolutely invading their lives. And Pharaoh says to Moses, plead with the Lord to take away the frogs from me and my people. I will let your people go to sacrifice to the Lord. So here, even Pharaoh is recognizing the fact that Moses is here to set the people free from Egypt for the purpose of sacrificing to the Lord. And as I said before, if you look in other translations, you'll see that God is saying worship. It'll use the word worship to describe that. So when I was thinking about what I love about the story in the book of Exodus, especially this part of the story in the beginning, is that, it's such a depiction of Jesus. God put Moses on the earth to set the people free, to bring them to the land of milk and honey, also so that they would sacrifice, also so that they would worship, also so that they would serve God. All of these things are really worship, because even in the land of milk and honey, when we have all that God provides for us, we just naturally have a heart to give thanks and to worship, and to be grateful to God. And I think sometimes we get so caught up in our whoops, I'm going to just take this back off here. I just realized it's still saying that. Sorry. When we get so caught up in our day-to-day lives, sometimes we might forget that Jesus came just as Moses came to set the people free. Christ came to set us free. And the reasons for that are no different today than they were in Moses' time. God sent Jesus to set us free for that same purpose, to live in a manner that we recognize that we are surrounded by all that God has given us, and that we would naturally have a heart of worship and thanksgiving. Also, that we would have festivals. We don't have to do them in the wilderness. They don't have to be big whoop to do festivals like they were in the Old Testament for 7 days. Who has 7 days, right? Not very many people. But that in our hearts and in our living would be um, festive, that our lives would be festive. We would, what do you think of when you think of having a festival or festivities? Don't you think of joy? Don't you think of camaraderie, of just community, rejoicing and giving thanks and celebrating with other people? When we think of Christmas, when we think of other holidays, Thanksgiving, when we celebrate with other people, maybe even wonderful times of worship and activities that we might do with our church families. We those are festive. They're festivities. God set us free to do that. God set us free so that we would worship him, that we would celebrate, that we would give thanks. So any time that we are feeling closed in, anytime that we're feeling um, like we're just being attacked, anytime that we feel like we're being pushed in a corner, we're we have to remember Jesus came to set us free. He came to set us free from that so that we could worship him. So anytime that we're feeling closed in, we're feeling pressured, we're feeling unsure about our future, we need to rest assured that Christ came to set us free from that bondage. Christ came to set us free that we would worship God. And we can start by giving thanks. We can start by asking the Lord for joy. We can start by asking the Lord to remind us in all of the things that he has provided for us, of the things that he's given us. He's given us everything that we need. And we, especially those of us that live in the Western world, we have been given a life of milk and honey, haven't we? We have been given lives that are really, truly full, even when we struggle, even when we're suffering. And for those of us that are experiencing that or have experienced that, even in our time in our walk with the Lord, we do have to remember that during those times, we still have the love of the Lord. He has still given us all that we need. And in those times of feeling imprisoned by illness or just the stresses of life or grief or whatever it might be, he has given us Jesus to set us free. And in those times, when I lost my first husband, Vinny, it took a while, really took a while, but I learned that grief and joy can actually live side by side. And why is that? Because Christ came to set us free from that grief. He has set us free from the bondage of pain and suffering. That doesn't mean that we don't feel that. It doesn't mean that we don't experience that. But in that, we can be set free to have joy. I literally had someone give me permission in my grief to have joy. That was truly awakening for me. I never thought about not only having permission, but that was God's plan for me. That's God's joy, is to see us have joy in the Lord. So when I also think about worship, I think about those first several years that I was in children's ministry at my home church. And our theme, that the whole reason that I began teaching the children at the church was because of my desire to teach children about worshiping God and the many ways in our day-to-day living that we worship God. And the building that we taught children's church had many windows. I don't know, it might have had might have even had as many as 10 or 12 windows. And in between the windows was a large area. And I went in and painted. Um, I painted across the top of each of the long walls in the building. We worship God when we, and then underneath that, in between each window, was a life-size mural of pictures of different ways in which we worship God. So I think in our culture, in our modern contemporary worship churches, we might think, when we first think of worship, we might think of singing joyful songs, or singing very um, deep worshipful songs, and we might think that's worship. But worship is also art, visual art. It's creating. Worship is also sharing Christ with others. Worship is also giving thanks. Worship is celebrating with others. Worship is prayer. So worship is giving. Worship is giving, tithing of all that God has given us, and giving some of that back. So there are so many ways to worship. But the point that I want to make this morning is that Christ came to set us free, just as Moses came to set the people free, for the purpose of worshiping and serving God. And when we get closed in and overwhelmed by our personal circumstances, we have to remember that God set us free. God desires to set us free, not necessarily free from the circumstance, but in the circumstance, to for the purpose of worshiping God, to serve him, to remember what he has set before us, and to give thanks, and to be set free. He wants us to experience being set free, even in our circumstances, just as Christ was set free in his in all his suffering, because he worshiped the Father. And this is exactly how we can live joyful lives. I love remembering that Jesus died on the cross, but he rose again to new life. And so in our being set free, it is to experience new life, not necessarily new circumstances, but experiencing a new life within those circumstances, where we give thanks and have joy and can worship the Lord our God, because we know that he loves us and has set us free to experience him, to have that relationship with him. So I've just been super encouraged this week about that, just remembering that, pondering that. And I just want to encourage you to do the same. Go back and look at Exodus and think about all the different ways in which Christ came to do the same thing that Moses came. Only we see in the Old Testament that the people in sacrifices alone could not get themselves right with God, could not enjoy and know fully and deeply the relationship that God created us to have with him. And so we have the honor and the privilege of knowing a different kind of freedom than the people of the Old Testament, and the people of Moses' day, because Christ set us free to truly give us new lives so that we could worship our God and experience this beautiful relationship that he originally made us to have with him, which is what we were originally made to live and experience. And we can do that today, even in the lives that we live, no matter what our circumstances are, that we can be set free to worship and experience the God who truly loves us and made us and is just waiting for us to experience him. So I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day, a great weekend, a wonderful week, and I hope that you'll take some time this week to ponder this idea of being set free, so that we not only will worship Him, but we will in our hearts live full, lavish lives filled with joy, like those who were uh, brought into the promised land of milk and honey, a life that is full and is full of joy. And I hope that your weekend and your week is full of joy as well. Love you all. And I will see you next Saturday on Fireside Chat. Bye bye.